I'm Sharon Bill. Welcome to my Music Theory Tuition series where I work with you step by step through the ABRSM Discovering Music Theory grades. I'll work through every single exercise and explain everything you need to know. You can access information about the books I have available to help you on my website. Go to sharonbill.com. For advert-free and longer lessons, you can become a patron at patreon.com/SharonBill. If you can give me a like, that would be super, and please do subscribe to my channel to stay updated. You can support this channel by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/SharonBill. We're continuing with the topic of rhythm, looking at dotted notes a little bit further now on page 27 of Grade 1 Discovering Music Theory. Now, we already know from previous chapters, if you want to recap, by all means, pop back to pages 2 and pages 13 for those new sections that we first covered. And we know that we group things to show each full beat. And so we know that a quaver and a quaver are beamed together. And now we're going to be adding dots. And so here we have two equal halves. And I mentioned last time that I imagine this as sort of the old-fashioned brass scales, where if they're equally weighted, they're level. If one gets heavier and goes up, the other one goes down. And I imagine that is how this works out, because here we have two equal halves, but if one gets longer, the other must get shorter. This one is shorter, therefore this one must get longer. So instead of having half and a half, we've got 3/4 and a quarter, or quarters and 3/4, but they are all grouped the same, showing that crotchet beat, so we can see where each new beat falls. When things aren't grouped, it's really difficult to read. And bear in mind, all of this music that we're writing here is always intended to be played, and we need the performer to see clearly and quickly where each beat falls so that it can easily play the passage of music in time. And so we can have equal half and half, 3/4, quarter, quarters, 3/4. And so let's move on to exercise 8, and we're going to look at these adding time signatures. And so this first one, I'm going to show you the long maths way, and then we can quickly just double check that by looking at the beaming and the general shape of the music. And so because it's easier to visualise, let's just diagram out the maths. There's a beat divided into semiquavers or quarters of a beat. And so we know that a quaver is half a beat. The dot is half as much again. So there's 3/4. And then there's a remaining quarter of a beat. And so 3/4 plus a quarter gives us 1 beat. We have the same here. However, we also know that quavers, semiquavers, etc. are grouped in crotchet beats. So we can see there's beat 1, there's beat 2, there's beat 3, just a crotchet's on its own. And so before we've even done all of this dividing the maths, we can see 1, 2, 3. Therefore, we know it's 3 beats in a bar, and we're counting in crotchet beats. And so we can do that quite easily. So I suggest you have a go at this remaining few, and then we'll check the answers through together. So let's just go over those now. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 semiquavers, which we know makes 1 beat. And so there's 1 beat. We know that a minim is 2, and half of 2 is 1. So that gives us 4 beats altogether. So we could write 4/4. Alternatively, you could write common time like that. But you see, we can just do that quickly at a glance because we know they are beamed together. There's beat 1, and then 3 beats there. 1 plus 3 equals 4. Here we have the same scenario again, and instead of being 2 equal halves, as I mentioned earlier, instead of being 2 equal halves, one's longer, one's shorter, it still shows 1 crotchet beat. So there's beat 1. Then we have a half a beat here, and this is half a beat, a quaver beat rest. A half plus a half is 1. So there's the second beat. And so we have 2 beats, each beat being a crotchet. Finally, let's have a go at this last exercise. So we know that a crotchet is 1 beat. The dot makes it half as much again. There's 1 1/2. So that's all of beat 1. And then this is the first part of beat 2. Here's the remaining part of beat 2. And then here we have, let's just get our beat. 2 quarters makes a half, and there's a half. There's beat 3. But we know that anyway because there's our final beat grouped together. And so we have 3 crotchet beats in that bar. And we can see here how important it is to show each new crochet beat. And if we move down to exercise 9, we've got to choose which is the correct grouping. And when we see those that are incorrectly grouped, it shows how tricky it is to actually read. It would just be so hard to play this example here. We're looking for 4 crochet beats, but they're very, very hard to find, especially in this first half of the bar. We can see there's beat, the last beat, there's 1 beat, there's 1 beat, and then it gets very confused here. 2 halves make a whole, that's a beat, but it's actually got this extra thing added on, whereas we've got 3 quarters and a quarter, there's a beat. But because they're not showing that by the beaming and the way the notes are grouped, that's very impossible to read. That is not correct. And straight away we can see very simply that this is the correct grouping. We have 3 quarters of a beat and a quarter. Remember, we've got one's longer, one's shorter. It still averages out to give us our whole beat. There's beat 1, there's beat 2, there's beat 3, there's beat 4. We can easily see where each beat falls. So much better for the performer. So, and again here, just to continue the thinking, we've got 3 quarters of a beat there, and then it's just left floating on its own. The remaining quarter should be on its own, leaving those to be grouped together. There's beat 1, they make beat 2, they make beat 3, there's beat 4. And so correct grouping is vital to the performer. So let's go on to exercise B. Perhaps have a go on your own and then come back into the video and we'll look at these together. So let's check these through together. Well, straight away we can see this one isn't correct because we've got a half and a quarter. We've got 3 quarters of a beat floating around on its own, whereas the remaining quarter is tagged on to something else. And then we've got a half a beat and a remaining half floating around. They should be grouped together, so that's not right. And then here we've got a mixture of a bit of everything's beamed together, and then this poor little quaver at the end's left all lonely on its own. Where's beat 1? Where's beat 2? I've no idea. Really, there's 3 quarters and a quarter. They should be together. And then 2 quarters and a half gives us the second beat. They should be together, which we can see here. There's our 3 quarters and a quarter. We know that the equal quavers, one's been made longer, one's been made shorter. There's beat 1, there's beat 2. What a relief for the performer. This first one looks nice and promising because we've got half and 2 quarters, which we know. Half and 2 quarters gives us beat 1. There's our 3 quarters and a quarter. There's beat 2, there's beat 3. Straight away that's our beat. Here, what a muddle here. This is okay, but then these should have been beamed and they've been left. So that gets a little bit lost there. And then here we've got a half and a quarter. So we've only got 3/4 of a beat. That final quarter should make up our beat, and it's been sort of tagged onto the next beat. So that gets all scrambled there. Let's have a look at this one here. So we've got 1.5 beats here. So there's beat 1. There's the first part of beat 2. We've got the remaining half of beat 2 to finish. But then it all gets a bit lost and it's all carried here. So we've got all of these beamed together. We need the remaining half of beat 2 to be isolated to show us exactly where beat 3 falls. So those 2 semiquavers, quarter plus a quarter, makes the final half actually belong to this beat here. There should be a break here showing us as there's beat 3 entirely separate. This looks more promising because here we have 1 beat. There's the first half of beat 2. There, 2/4 gives us the second half of beat 2. They belong to that beat there. There's beat 3. 3/4 and a quarter, there's beat 4. That's the one. This one, we've got 1.5, but then we've only got this here. The remaining half, we're 1/4 of a beat missing. That belongs to that still, and they've grouped it to the wrong beat. And then we've got this random 1/4 of a beat just left on its own, floating nowhere before we can do our final crotchet. And so we can see very clearly how important correct beaming is. I hope this is helpful to your studies. Please do like and subscribe to stay updated. If you'd like to support this channel, you can buy me a coffee, and for advert-free lessons, you can become a patron. Do visit my website where you'll find many resources available to help you. Visit sharonbill.com. Thanks for watching. Bye.